Are you a runner? Or more importantly, do you want to become one? Do you want to know where to begin or how to get better? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Run Amazing Utah, where runners of Utah share their inspirational stories of how they conquered their battles, reached their goals, and overcame the seemingly impossible. If they can do it, so can you.
What if you could? Reach that big dream that you've always dreamt about. Maybe you think it's impossible. Maybe others have told you it's impossible. Maybe it's your body that's holding you back. Maybe you feel like you've aged or it will never be well enough to do what you want it to do. Well, guess what? That's not true. At Body Smart, we empower you and teach you how to make changes toward the kind of life you want to live and give you the tools you need to reach that goal you've always wanted to reach. From running your first mile to qualifying for Boston, we have everything you need to reach that dream. Call us at 801-479-4471 or contact us through our website, bodysmartutah.com. We can help you maximize your performance and stay on the road. Let us help you reach that dream.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Run Amazing Utah podcast. We are so excited to have Dr. Steve Wynn in with us. He is from the Intermountain North Ogden Clinic, and he has a great running story and just did a metabolic test with us. So it's always mean to beat somebody up with a metabolic test first and then interview him after, but he did a great job. He is literally excellent. Just has a cool backstory to his lifetime of fitness and running. And so we wanted to have him on and share a little bit about who he is and how he helps his patients as well. So I'm Cameron Garber, Mark Humbert, and we're excited to have you, and Steve Wynn.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, so Steve, you just did a metabolic test. How was that experience?
Okay, I was telling Mark before I started, I really don't like to push myself too hard on exercise, so it pushed my limits a little bit. But
yeah, for
good
sure.
to get a sense of where I am and interesting data that comes from that.
Yeah, and we can use it in so many different ways,
right.
And so it is fun to kind of see where you're at, and the good news is it's not a very long test, so you don't have to push yourself for very long. But
not suffering.
But it is, you can definitely get to a suffering state there and push yourself, but that's great. So we're excited to have you in. So tell us a little bit. You've been running for years now, huh?
Yeah.
How did you get started with running? Was that something you've done since a kid, or?
Yeah. So I was thinking a little bit about that, and I'm old enough that when I was a kid, you didn't go out for a run.
Yeah, that's a fairly new
now.
Right.
But my dad was always into fitness, and it's something he stressed with me and my siblings in various ways. When I was probably 8 or 9, all of our family got bikes just for recreational riding, and we lived out in the old Granger area where you could ride for miles and not see anything other than cows. And so his emphasis on exercise was kind of what got me interested. He was working on his PhD thesis and wanted to get the kids out of the house, so he got us all skis and a season pass to Park City, which incidentally, so this was back in the mid-60s, a pass for all of our family at Park City would pay, this was a day pass, $5 for the first skier, $4 for the second, $3 for the third, and then $2 for the rest of us at Park City.
You can't even buy a hamburger for that up there anymore.
So he'd get us out of his hair with skiing so he could work on his thesis. So between biking and skiing, those were kind of my starts to fitness. And then in high school, I ran track and was just kind of a mediocre track runner, but enjoyed the fitness.
Sure.
And since then, just kind of been a recreational runner. I'm a physician, so it's kind of hard to tell your patients to go out and do something if you're not setting an example.
Right. I appreciate that, though. That's a good quality to have. That's not true of everyone, and it's good to be able to live the lifestyle that you're promoting.
Right. And obviously, as I kept with it, see the benefits not only physically, but emotionally, what exercise does for you is just so important.
Yeah.
So I ran, again, recreationally, and then in med school we had a group of us that would get together a couple of times a week for basketball. And so there was a mix, but mostly running through my 30s and 40s and 50s and kind of recreational. And then I think it was, I think I got plantar fasciitis or something when I was running, and it kills me, as you know, to not be able to exercise. So I thought, I really can't run, I've got to do something else. So I got a bike, so when I had an overuse injury, I could usually bike ride and enjoyed that. I grew up downhill skiing, as I said, but when costs started to go up, I bagged that, and there literally were probably a half dozen years where I was really bored with winter here in the
Yeah. It's
what am I
tough.
going to do?
Yeah.
So I took up cross-country skiing.
Oh, yeah. I love cross-country skiing.
And, it's cheap. You don't fight the crowds. You can go on a snowy day, and it's just as good as a bluebird day. Mm-hmm. So I've been cross-country skiing for about 10 years, and so now I don't consider myself a runner. In fact, I consider myself more a outdoor enthusiast. I rarely go out running or exercising for the exercise as much as I do for to enjoy the beauty of nature.
Which is a great spot to be
We
in.
have plenty of it here in Utah and in Ogden. So, whether it's cross-country skiing or bagging a peak along the Wasatch or going out for a run, mostly trail runs now. But that's kind of where I am now, and the cross-training allows me to kind of avoid the overuse injuries.
Yeah, and it's a great way to do it. To have a couple different medium with which you can exercise really does help to just change up the stresses.
Right.
And you get different benefits from each one as well.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is you can feel like you're in shape for running.
Right.
And then you get your bike out and it's like starting over.
And then in the cross-country ski, it's a whole other game.
Right. Well, and the cross-country ski is so interesting. We have one guy that works with us that is quite a high-level athlete in both running in the summer, but then he does, Nordic events, and he's quite accomplished. But it's always that, okay, now we're a couple months away from running again. You got to start getting the pounding on your feet, because his heart and lungs stay in shape, but his muscles and bones and ligaments need to get used to that pounding again, because it's easy to just transition right into the same volume of training.
Right.
But you got to kind of allow your body to adapt to each one, it's interesting. So, now with your training, you've kept in shape and kept your fitness high, despite having some fairly significant health complications throughout all of that. Tell us a little bit more about that and what you're willing to share.
So from the time I was an infant, I had kidney problems. I had something called reflux, meaning urine went up into my kidneys as an infant, setting in line kind of a slow decline of kidney function from the time I was an infant. So I kind of grew up, a couple of things that contribute to my story. I grew up in doctors' offices, which contributed to me wanting to be a physician.
Sure.
But I also grew up knowing that at some point I would need a kidney transplant. And that wasn't talked about a lot as a kid, but as I got into my early teens, started meeting with a kidney specialist and kind of plotting out my numbers, and then the year before I finished my undergraduate work up at the University of Utah, my numbers really kind of took a dive, and my doctor said it's time to look at transplant, kidney transplant. So my family tested looking for a donor, and my dad, who was 65 at the time, which is kind of the high end of where they will accept a donor, but because he was so active throughout his life, he was deemed to be a very good fit, and his blood type and antigens were a fit. So I got a kidney from my dad. Interestingly, on the day I was supposed to walk in my college graduation, I was getting a new kidney.
Wow.
And then, as I said, because of my health, I kind of grew up wanting to always be a doctor.
Yeah.
I had applied to medical school that year, but because of my health, put it off a year. Got accepted at an out-of-state school, but not at the U where I wanted to go.
Sure.
Put it off a year, reapplied, and my second year I got accepted to the University.
That's great.
Of Utah. And my transplant, I've really been blessed, and I relate that to my health, to taking care of my health throughout my years. And back then I got my first transplant in 1987.
Okay.
And as time went on, I'd get 10 and 15 years out, and I'd ask my doctor, so, what's the date on someone my age getting 15 years into my transplant? And I'd say, well, we don't have a lot of data because you're kind of beating the numbers.
Yeah.
Wow. And again, by that time, my functioning kidney was 75, 80 years old. And,
Right.
And that kidney lasted for 28 years or so.
Wow, that's incredible.
Which was kind of unheard of back then. And again, you take into account that at that time the kidney was a 92-year-old kidney.
Yeah.
And I should mention my dad passed away at 94.
Okay.
And his donating a kidney never
didn't affect that at all.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I always link the association with my kidney failure with, I did the Ogden half. And my kidney was functioning pretty well at that time, but probably got a little dehydrated. And my exercise pattern, I just never felt like I recovered from that.
Okay.
Probably didn't hydrate as well, but the biopsies on my kidney as I started to decline really showed more of what's called chronic rejection. And so after about 28 years with my dad's kidney, my numbers as far as my kidney function started to decline at a little faster rate, and I got on a transplant list. Once I got to this kind of level, you have to be sick enough to get on the list, which was kind of a frustrating time for me because I was
can't imagine.
Sick enough. One of the problems with kidney failure is you get anemic.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't quite sick enough to get on the list for transplantation, but sick enough to not feel real well.
Right. To not maintain the fitness that kept you healthy.
Yeah. As a doctor, I knew I could take some medicines that would probably trigger my kidney to get worse, and I was tempted to do that a couple of times to speed the process, because as an athlete, even a recreational athlete, you know how much that exercise helps you feel better emotionally.
Oh, yeah.
So here I am struggling with the emotions of dealing with a chronic disease.
Well, and
my medicine is to run.
Yeah.
And although I did, it just wasn't as satisfying.
Yeah.
So there was this time for about 2 years where I tried to maintain some activity, but it was a little frustrating.
As a physician, you bear other people's burdens quite a bit too, right? Like you're listening to other people's problems all day.
So here's the funny story. I'd go home to my wife, and because we had this conversation about every day, she'd say, "So did you see any patients sicker than you today?"
That's funny.
So, but I was able to function, and grateful that I was. And I had a daughter who actually was a match as far as second kidney. She was just getting married, looking towards family. I was able to function, so my doctors felt it was best to not use her kidney, so I got on a cadaveric transplant list. I had a few friends say, "Oh, you're a doctor, you'll get a kidney within a month or two."
Yeah.
Not so. I waited about 2.5 years.
Wow. Yeah, they don't really look at things like that,
no,
right?
they don't.
Yeah. You're not in the in club just because you're a physician.
No.
Right.
And so after about 2.5 years, a cadaveric kidney became available. And in a little more personal, but that's really kind of I don't even know the word to describe the irony of sitting in my transplant took place late at night about 8 years ago, a little more than 8 years ago. And it's really kind of a sobering thought to be so excited about regaining my health, but knowing that there's a family somewhere that's mourning the death of
a loved
one. So a lot of kind of poignant feelings that night, waiting to go into the
Mixed
OR,
emotions,
waiting for a woman to come out of the OR who got one kidney, and I was then going to be wheeled in to get the other kidney of this woman. All that we know is that she was a mother and wife of mother of 4 kids and a wife that we never were able to hook up with the family. So that was 8 years ago, and once again I have enjoyed great health since then. Probably one of my greatest accomplishments that I view, and it's not too big, but when I got my transplant it was in January, and I set a goal to do Xterra, which was 9 months later.
There at Snow Basin?
Up at Snow Basin, just the sprint, but still
But
Xterra. And
that's
so
fantastic.
9 months to the day of getting my transplant, I did Xterra, and
that's incredible.
came in about last for my age group. But,
That's okay.
but
You
that
did
was
it.
an accomplishment for me to.
So that, to me, that is such an accomplishment, because so many people in that position with health complications feel broken, right?
Yeah.
How do you get over that feeling of feeling sick or broken, and instead of hiding in the closet and thinking, oh, I need to take care of myself by resting, how do you get that mentality of I need to take care of myself by moving?
So Cameron, that's such a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I really put my mindset back to my parents, who never coddled me as a kid. And they could have.
Sure.
You know, they could have said, oh, maybe you ought to not do this or that. And I remember my dad, after the fact, expressing that as I wanted to recreate or even run track in high school, he was a little hesitant to endorse that. But he never let my illness, which was pretty significant even as a kid, keep me from doing what I wanted. We, as a family, would go on camping trips every year, and most of our camping trips would involve hikes. Zion was one of our favorite places, and
hydration is an issue.
Hydration is an issue. There was a time or two on camping trips where I had to be taken to the ER.
Wow.
Out in the middle of nowhere. But my parents never kept that from the lifestyle. They never kept it from keeping my siblings from, oh, we need to take care of Steve, he may get sick. They never had that approach. And so
that's great.
There was never a time where my illness became an excuse to not do what I wanted.
Yeah.
I remember when I was meeting with everyone you meet with for a transplant, I was meeting with a social worker, and she was saying, we could probably get you some disability. And I had just graduated from college and applying to medical school, and I just that thought never came to mind.
Right.
And so I really do think my parents planted in me this idea that illness was not an excuse for living life to its fullness. And now as a physician, I just think there are very few conditions that exercise is a benefit, not a hindrance.
Right.
In my interacting with others, I had an interesting conversation with a woman who has spent her life doing research on people with kidney failure. part of her research was looking at patients who were getting kidney dialysis and outcomes that could improve these patients' health after dialysis, which is really rough on the body.
Oh, it's fatiguing.
Yes,
Just,
incidentally, I was lucky enough to never need dialysis, but that's... Anyway, part of her study was looking at patients that were getting dialysis, and the placebo group who just got dialysis as normal. The other group got dialysis, were dialyzed while they were on an exercise bike.
Wow.
And I don't remember what the outcomes were, what outcomes they were looking at, but the data showed much improved outcome with those that were on the exercise bike.
I can't imagine.
So if you can exercise while getting dialysis, which is getting huge volumes of blood in and out of your, through a machine, I just don't think there's many things that exercise isn't going to help.
Right, absolutely. I agreed. And exercise doesn't have to be, I think we think that exercise has to be us punishing ourselves and killing ourselves off.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to start out there. We may get there someday,
right,
but it doesn't have to be.
Such a good point.
It can be a walk around the block to begin, and then that walk becomes a little more brisk and a little bit longer. But it can start at wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And I think people think that they have to hold themselves to some standard. And I imagine your exercise post-transplant was different than what it was 2 years down the road, right? You had to build back up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said earlier when we were talking, just, you really kind of listen to how you're feeling, and, some days you'll push it a little bit more, and other days you just, I'm just, this is relaxing, I'm enjoying nature.
Yeah.
And it's just a really nice approach to exercise. It does take some of the stress out of it and some of the pressure that we put on ourselves, I think.
Well, and that's, we try to emphasize that big time here, in your exercise should really support your lifestyle and not be about losing weight or about like all these other kind of side goals that we have about body image or other things. When it becomes about that, it really it distracts from the reason why we're really doing it, and then we tend to stop and start a lot more and things like that.
Well, we live in such a competitive world with social media that we can compare ourselves to Instagram posts or Strava posts, and, and if we're going to compete, we compete against ourselves, and even that maybe is not
always healthy. Right. Using it as a way to me, I run so that I can do all the things that I love to do.
Yes.
Running isn't necessarily my passion from just a pure running standpoint. I quite enjoy it now. But really, it was a means to an end of, I like to cross-country ski, snowshoe, bike, everything. I like to hike, camp, whatever. And I have 4 boys. If I want to keep up with them, I want to be able to beat them up the mountain, not drag me up the mountain. And so to keep up with my kids, running was just kind of part of the equation. A means to maintaining my health at the level that I wanted to. So I run not for any other reason than just to maintain my ability to live life on my terms, rather than being dictated to by a kidney what you can and can't do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, over the past couple of years, one of my favorite places to be is on a mountaintop as the sun rises.
Oh, yeah.
And so I run or do something such that I can enjoy the journey there.
Yep. And you get there in time to see the sun come up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I've loved hearing you talk and just the perspective you have on everything. Obviously, as we've talked about, you've been through a lot, right? It's been quite the journey. But it seems, and I know we touched on it before, but it seems like that mindset piece has been so huge for you, just being able to kind of shift your perspective. It sounds like, your parents were really influential in that.
Right.
And just some of your other practices, you mentioned gratitude and being able to kind of slow down. I guess really, what would you say have been your practices from kind of a mindset perspective, and what's enabled you to kind of shift that to be where you're at today? This is a loaded question.
I mean, I think part of where I'm at today is because I have found these other activities that I just enjoy, I I mean, later today I'll go out cross-country skiing and
Love it.
That's awesome.
and it's really the enjoyment of being out in nature
Right.
that drives me now. And I'm not sure that's really addressing your
Well,
question.
I think in some ways it is.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of soul searching and other things while you're out there?
So I'm a loner in general.
Sure.
Almost
Me
do
too.
everything alone. Never listen to music.
Yeah.
Don't. Well, I guess I do own some earbuds, but never take them out to running. And I just. I was talking to my daughter the other day, and she was kind of doing some searching of my soul and saying, "What do you think about when you're out?" And I just think. I mean, I enjoy nature. I'm really into mindfulness,
Yeah.
which is just being in the moment. And sometimes when we run, we're so intent on
Right. Checking our watch.
checking our and although I always run with my Garmin and look at my heart rate now and again, I really enjoy just being with one with nature and enjoying the birds. I was up cross country skiing a couple of years ago, and this story is probably a little made up, but I watched a couple of skiers go by me just really cruising. And I was standing there looking at a moose that was 50 yards away, and I don't think they saw the moose. And sometimes we are so intent, getting kind of philosophical here,
Right.
but sometimes we are so intent on reaching our goal that we don't stop to pay attention to
Right. To enjoy the journey.
enjoy the journey,
yeah.
what's around
I love
us,
it.
and especially here in Ogden, where there is so much to enjoy.
So pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So I always say, I found the same thing where snowmobiles or four-wheelers or boats or things like, they're fun. I can't deny that. It's fun. But at the same time, you don't get the same experiences when you're on a run or when you're cross-country skiing.
Yeah.
You get to see and hear and feel the nature around you. When you scare nature away, or you,
Yes.
there's so many reasons why I like to be the motor. That's what I tell people.
That's awesome.
Like, I like to be the motor
It's awesome.
and not
Yeah.
use the motor, because then I get to really experience it.
It is amazing what you see, even on a bike, compared to being in your car, and even more so running on a trail versus driving along on the road that looks out towards the trail.
You just notice so much more and feel and hear and taste and smell and everything so much more.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel like that ability to kind of step back and be in the moment has impacted your relationships, and then especially like in your practice as a physician?
It's interesting to me as I talk to patients, because there are some patients that I say, I think it'd really benefit you to be a little more active. And it's like I'm telling them to get all their teeth pulled or something.
Yeah.
And yet if someone tells me, okay, you have to take 2 weeks off from exercise, it's like I'm getting my teeth pulled.
Yeah.
Don't do that to me. And it's an interesting question that I don't have an answer to, and I'm sure that it's genetics and with some life influences that causes us to be so different. And I think everyone needs to, I question what I can do as a doctor to influence people, because I think people in general just need their own aha moment to make that lifestyle change.
It's true. That's a hard thing to force on people. I'm sure insurance companies in the future will try lots of different tactics to try to get people to be more fit and things. And I agree. Sometimes I always say until the ball hits the ground, it won't bounce. And so, sometimes we do have to have that crisis moment before we realize, I've got to do something about it. And unfortunately, sometimes that's too late. COVID is a great example of that, where people haven't, really cared about their health, obviously, too much until now it's crisis mode, and now it's a big deal, when just a little bit of exercise may have been able to prevent the worst of the symptoms.
So, Cameron, that story plays out so often in my clinic, where I've been in my practice now for about close to 25 years. And I see patients who are in their 70s and 80s who when I started seeing them were in their 40s and 50s. And now they're coming to me in their 70s and 80s, and they have diabetes, and they have arthritis, and they have high blood pressure, and they're overweight, and they're saying, what can I do to get my health back? And what I want to say is, well, you should have done that 20 years ago, because there does come this point where these medical problems become overwhelming, and it's such a big hole to dig themselves out of.
Yeah, it is a much steeper hill to climb at that point. But at the same time, even little beginnings make a big difference. Yep. They say with just a 7-pound weight loss, a lot of the time your blood work numbers can be dramatically reversed. And so just small changes even can make a big difference in reversing those trends. And so that's the $1 million question, is how do we motivate people? Literally multi-million-dollar question. How do we motivate people to feel like they can participate in fitness? Right. And that's honestly part of our mission here at Body Smart, is we want to try to find a way to have enough one-on-one contact with people to help motivate them to do it. But it's an uphill battle for sure. Yeah,
well, seeing the data you can generate from the testing we did this morning, I think that's just amazing data that can help people.
Right. If I could force everyone to do it. It wouldn't work, but it really does open your eyes to, like, hey, you don't have to kill yourself to get benefit from movement. Yeah. It's just about starting moving and building on that day after day. Right. Consistency is the most important thing, more than intensity, or just stick with it, and it eventually pays off. But we're preaching to the choir there, right? But it's so interesting to hear your journey and how you've been able to, from mindset instilled in you as a kid, to just keep moving and how that's impacted your whole life and your health. And that's great. And those are the types of stories we love to share here on the podcast. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
If you want to go see Dr. Wynn, he is, again, at the Intermountain Clinic in North Ogden. And I'm assuming still accepting patients and...
Kind of. The truth is, I want to retire so I can get out and enjoy this stuff
a little bit more.
Probably practice for a few more years.
So if you'd like to reach out to him and you feel like he could help you, reach
feel
out
free,
to him there.
Really. I mean, if you see me on this podcast and there's something that sparked your interest, please call. So.
For sure. So thank you so much for joining us on the Run Amazing Utah podcast, and we look to see you on the next episode. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff, so you can catch all of our episodes. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Run Amazing Utah. Remember, if they can do it, you can do it too. If you have an inspirational running story or know someone who does, we would love to feature you too. Contact us through our Instagram or Facebook, Run Amazing Utah. Amazing Utah. Amazing Utah.